trace it, and cut it. It doesn't have to be perfect. We have wedges as well. Very basic. The tighter the curve, the skinnier the piece you have to cut. This going around a basic stair is 10 slices of wood. We cut our wood mostly, and John as well, on a table saw. And it will take out a certain amount of material from the table saw. Does anyone use a resaw bandsaw, or do you mostly use table saw?
Table saw.
Resaw bandsaw, we have one, a nice fancy one, but it kind of leaves ridges in the wood. The table saw we feel is much faster and it works well. When we cut the wood, to make an inch, it took about 10 pieces. And we start with something more than double the size of the pieces that we're using. We don't want to get down and cut our fingers with a table saw. So this makes this 2.5 inches. We start with this. If you don't have a solid piece and you're using wood flooring, you can use wood flooring. But you got to be careful when you cut it out where the ridges are that it doesn't go down below, and you got to keep it relatively flat. Some people cut off the bottom ridges of the flooring and laminate another piece of wood on the bottom of it, solid piece. All right, we're going to, on our forms, to keep it from sticking to our forms, either use, the 3M guy likes us to use as much 3M tape as possible. So that's why we have 3M tape there. Or use wax paper. You want to glue this thing up?
Yep, we can. Most of the time before we actually start gluing anything up, we'll take plastic. I'll usually take plastic, just regular thin mill poly, lay it out, glue this thing up and wrap it in that poly. It just kind of keeps glue from getting everywhere. We wrap all this whole thing, lay plastic out, put all this form inside of plastic, and as we glue it up, we'll actually wrap the whole thing into plastic. That way it just keeps glue from getting everywhere, keeps it from getting all over your hands. Sprig likes to use regular carpenter's glue. Me personally, I typically will use something more like the urethane glues, the Gorilla glues. Tends to actually have a little bit more open time for me. Just most of the time I'm doing it by myself. I need that little extra open time. It doesn't really matter what glue that you're using. A lot of times we'll try to match the color of the glue a little more towards the wood. If you're doing darker species, the Brazilian cherry, walnuts, you know, some of these glues come in some brown colors. We kind of want to go more towards those brown colors so you don't see that little faint line on them. So that helps a lot.
Hey John, when we're using, this right here is a template. You can make it out of any piece of paper, floor paper, what have you. And we trace our template, cut it with a razor knife, and lay it back down on a piece of plywood, and cut it out with a jigsaw, and make it a little bit proud. And we take a sander. Good guy. We take a sander and get that line off, so we got a pretty good template. All right, we're going to glue. What we did is basically cut all our pieces, and we put some X's across it while we're cutting it through the table saw, and we mark every single piece, 1 through 15, so we put them back together so you'll get the same grain pattern when you glue it together. And then right here we've laid it out, we put some carpenter nails down, laid it flat, laid it tight, and we're going to spread the glue. Some of this glue sets up fast.
Check 1, 2. 1,
so
2.
you can't screw around when you're putting this thing. You got to get it done, glued up, and tightened up. So we're gonna put some glue down now. We good there, technical man? Yeah. Okay.
Right next to that.
There you go. I'll talk loud and you use that.
Good?
We got 6 minutes. No, I'm just kidding.
We got 6 minutes.
Passing stuff.
Biggest thing about it, just don't be scared to put some glue on it. You just got to get it done. Try to get it out as uniform as you can. We've got a couple things here just to help us trial it out.
He's a little tight on the glue. This is free, so we can use as much as possible. He's from Cincinnati, so.
We're fairly conservative.
Yeah,
that's perfect.
I think so.
It's pretty perfect.
But sometimes you can use your own form if you have a bay window and actually screw these cams to the plywood on a job site and use the baseboard as your template. And it is nice when you can bend wood. It's very simple, very basic. It doesn't really cost you barely anything, especially if you use the flooring, and it can really jack up your money at the end of the day.
Ready?
All right.
One. How do they clamp? This is the hard part.
Yeah?
Yeah.
All right. All right. We're just basically putting these things together. They're all pre-marked, labeled, so we know they go back together so we can see the grain. The table saw does take a little bit, scoop some of the grain out, but it will basically follow the same configuration of the grain. It makes it look much better than someone that cuts it out of a solid piece of wood, because the grain is consistently going all the way around. And also, we don't obviously glue our front piece or our back piece because we don't want to stick it to this form. The reason why we put the blue tape so it wouldn't stick. It takes maybe a few hours for it to set up. And we'll usually start, excuse me, I don't mean to turn around on you here. Start it in the center. And you got it?
Yep.
All right. Also, we always like to make this a little bit longer because it will tear out toward the end as it goes around a bend, and we want to have enough room to make multiple cuts. All right, we got good.
Yep.
All right. Sometimes you have to come back in and tighten her back up again. Tighter the curve, the more of these cams you need. Yeah. Good?
Yep.
All right. Usually you're doing this by yourself, so you gotta get creative. All right. And also, we like to take a hammer and a piece of wood to kind of beat it down, because sometimes you'll get some overwood. Is that good? All right, more right around the side. We get.
Yeah, bring it on.
Okay. We're gonna go radio silence here for about 15 seconds so we can get more. You can extend these out if you're working by yourself, so you can push them with your knee. These are basic cams that can be made at just about any length you want. Wow. Go the wrong way. There you go. Yep.
Yep.
So sometimes what we do is the first piece, a test piece, see how thin or thick we want it thicker if we can. And we do a dry piece to see if it'll break. If it starts to break a little bit, sometimes we'll wet these down. So people steam them, but we just wet them a little bit, mist them, put the glue on, it should go. You know, eventually this can make a pretty tight curve. Different woods bend a little easier or better than others. You're just going to have to work it out. All right. Ah. Wrong way.
Yep.
Some people, once they finish and take it out of the form, a lot of overwood, you can run it through a planer, a sander. Some people scrape it. Some people scrape it while it's still dry. Man, sound like a car repair shop. Sorry, I didn't want to turn backside you guys the whole time here. Just put enough pressure on it. You don't want to crush the grain, just to get it nice and tight. If you do break it a little bit, you can always doctor it up. You don't have to get rid of the whole form.
You can, when you're doing this, you can actually put blocks of wood across this from your template across to your cam. Screw them down and it'll help hold that overwood down some.
You make your wedges twice as thick or more than what you got on the base, so you can knock them in and knock them out. You'll get a little spring back, but you can push it back in. I don't make the template a little bit different from the spring back. Here's a piece, glued up, took about 3 hours to dry. Once you sand it up, it'll look real good. Any questions?